June has prepared a seminar today, and she will tell you what the topic is and the way she explains the topic.
All right, John, go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Hora.
Hi.
The title of today's seminar was Issues of Human Sexuality and the Pursuit of Wholeness.
Issues of human sexuality and the pursuit of wholeness.
Yes.
What a fancy title.
Yes, I thought so too. And what we tried to do in just the short period of time was try to see a little bit about the cultural ideas in the context of all the different levels of value.
Yes.
The cultural ideas about sex. And then I presented a few short quotes from workshops and classes and books concerning sex within the context of spiritual values and metapsychiatric thought.
Yes.
So I think we'll just start right off with questions, if that's all right.
Sure, anything you say.
You're being very patient. One question that seems to arise a lot is the question of whether it seems that it's very difficult to get to conceptualize sex outside of the area of wanting and not wanting. And so in a discussion this morning, the thought came up, or the question came up, whether sexual activity would ever be a part of anyone's life if they were beyond wanting and not wanting. Can you answer that?
Yes. Well, what is the alternative to wanting and not wanting?
What God wants.
Yes. Now, what does God want?
God wants to be manifest in our lives.
As what?
As love and intelligence?
As love. Well, therefore, in the context of love, healthy sex is conceivable, which is not primarily lustful, but a pure expression of love, and perhaps a desire for procreation.
Yes, thank you.
I remember my talk with a Zen master by the name of Furukawa. And he said, my friend Suzuki married a young woman in his old age, and he had a very great laugh at that. But he said, I was married all my life to this stick, and he showed me the stick with which he beats the students over the head. Now, apparently he implied that a higher level of enlightenment is a condition where they neither marry nor are given in marriage. It is just pure spiritual love, where the issue of sex doesn't arise. But neither is it a matter of abstinence or refraining. It's just having outgrown the desire. But there is nothing wrong with it in the context of sincere love and mutual approbation.
I had one more question. In a class last fall, a student asked the meaning of sex in a relationship, and the answer was that it was a power struggle, and that when pure enlightened individuals participated in sex, it was a holy experience. It said sex among enlightened individuals is a joint participation in a holy experience.
Yes, we could speak of it that way too, right.
Is that then the current whole experience that stuck with me. Is that then the expression of love, mutual expression of love?
That's right, Joan, of course.
Okay.
Otherwise, sex can be the vehicle of the craziest, most bizarre fantasies being acted out in bed or out of bed or in this action. It can cover a multitude of meanings depending on the participant's fantasies. But that's really not sex anymore. It is just a lustful expression of various fantasies which people are afflicted by. I can hear a very loud silence there.
Well,
Perhaps, perhaps,
that's what I would say.
yes.
What is the meaning of, let's say, being addicted to sex, such that you feel like that your motivating is such that you crave relationships so that you can have sex, and then almost any relationship is based upon sexual gratification?
Well, as I have just said, the sex, not in the context of love, carries many meanings. Now, perhaps what you are alluding to is compulsive sex. There are people who go about having sex very compulsively. And that compulsive, as you know, all compulsions are ways of coping with unbearable hostility and anger. So if anyone seems to be afflicted by a compulsion to have sex, either a heterosexual or homosexual, the issue is not really sex. The issue is just struggle to cope with unbearable, repressed anger.
When do you know the difference? Or
Now you see, Faye, in metapsychiatry we have a saying, you can have all the sex in the world as long as you are not interested in it. Have you heard that before? Yeah? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Now, sex is really not a problem. The problem is always our interest in sex. And the interest in sex depends on many factors, especially fantasies and the economy of emotional balance.
I sitting here thinking that, well, we really need to understand and know rather than if sex happens, it happens.
We need to understand the meaning of our mental preoccupation with sex. As I said, and I repeat again, sex is not the problem. The interest in sex usually reveals the existence of certain problems. And if the interest is compulsive, then it is a very serious problem.
I guess what my stumbling block is I've never really had a companion before with a relationship that wasn't sexually motivated. So I kind of get stuck in that human side of it.
Well, of course, sex is a very fashionable idea, which I is presented and rationalized by psychologists and various. There are even so-called sex therapists nowadays who are teaching people how to do it, the purely operational approach to that function. But this is very naive.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Faye.
Dr. Hora?
Yes.
This is Alona.
Yes, Ilona.
I have a question regarding touch and touching.
Yes.
Many times, from the time that we're little, we hear that touching is a need and we need to be touched. And as we get older, the ability to touch someone, male or female, on the leg, on the arm, on the shoulder, whatever, is sometimes it's part of your sexuality or your, I don't know, but what would be the meaning of touching? Not necessarily specifically touching leading to a sexual act, but just touching in the context of being with somebody.
Yes. You spoke this word with the proper emphasis, somebody. What is the metapsychiatric understanding of this phenomenon, which is widespread, of the desire to touch and to hold hands or to touch parts of the body or to fondle or to handle or to be touched?
Well, would it be friction?
No, it is a desire to confirm the reality of the physical body. It gives us a comfort. It's very comforting to touch and to be touched. It relieves existential anxiety. You see, we are forever afraid that perhaps the body is not real. And we are afraid to become aware of the fact that the body is just an externalization of thought. And if we can touch each other, we reassure each other that we are really here. Sometimes people say, pinch me because I think I am dreaming. You know this saying, right? Pinch me. Have you ever heard it, Ilona?
Yeah.
Yes? Now what are we asking for when we ask to be pinched?
We know that something is real?
Yes, we want to be reassured that we are not dreaming, that we are in contact with reality, in quotation marks. So the desire, which is often spoken of as a need to touch and to be touched, is a desire for reassurance that our physical bodies constitute primary reality. This is very comforting to us because we are apparently in doubt about it.
So if someone we love or think we love is in an uncomfortable situation or place, then touching is maybe an inappropriate, a touch of comfort, so to speak, would be an inappropriate or unhelpful gesture.
Well, it is inappropriate for someone who is seeking to realize a higher reality, who is on that spiritual journey towards enlightenment. You remember the scene described in the Bible when Jesus came out of the tomb and Mary, he met Mary who was looking for him. Remember that scene?
Yeah.
And Mary wanted to embrace him. And he said, "Don't touch me, for I have not yet ascended." Remember that scene?
Yeah. What does it mean?
It means don't touch me because that will delay my ascension. You see, I would derive tremendous physical comfort for being embraced by you. And that would reinforce, it would tempt me to believe and remain a physical person. But I am on my way towards ascension, where I have to realize that the physical is mental, and I am not a material, corporeal personality, but a living soul. So he warned her, saying, "Don't touch me, for I have not yet ascended. I am on my way towards full enlightenment. And if I would be touched by you, this would be too pleasurable, and it would slow down my spiritual progress."
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Jane.
Yes, Jeannie.
I'm in a class that was last week speaking about forgiveness. And at that class, we also were told what the title of this class was going to be about.
Yes.
I've kind of been feeling what comes up in my consciousness in both ways. And I'm discovering that all the thoughts that I carry about myself, but particularly about my sexual side, have to do with two issues, either the power or being an object.
Yes.
If I heard what you just said about the comment with Jesus when he spoke with Mary, the common element in the power and the object then is a desire to be connected. And was Jesus saying, please don't ask me to get, or please don't seduce me into connecting myself in the wrong direction? I mean,
No, the issue is not the connection. The issue is the confirmation of our materiality. You see, it's very comforting for us to believe that we are physical persons.
I guess what I'm thinking about is a conversation that isn't clear in my memory, but it was quite some time ago when we talked about the existential crisis.
What about that?
It seems to me it's coming up in my mind that we were fearful of being alone, and I interpreted that to mean not connected to anything. But if I cannot see myself as a living soul,
Yes.
which I'm translating in my head to say I'm connected with all that God is,
Yes.
then my pursuit becomes one of drawing myself back into my humanness, or perhaps by the vehicle of sexuality.
Yes, you can say that, yes.
That's about as far as I can go right now.
Well, that's pretty far.
Oh,
Dr. Hora,
Yes.
this is Larry.
Yes, Larry.
I have a question in relationship regarding not interest in sex, but problems that arise when people complain of lack of interest in sex.
Yes.
And it is not uncommon to come across this in relationships where there is a swing from interest to no interest, or that it just ceases to be an issue, or perhaps there's significant meaning to there being a significant disinterest.
Yes.
But I was wondering if you could address the aspects of relationships that are loving, that are fairly stable. There's obviously a lot of love in the relationship when you look at it, and yet one of the partners might complain about the other partner not having enough interest in sex.
Yes. Well, you have spoken the right word. You see, it is helpful to distinguish between lack of interest and disinterest. What could be the difference between these two words?
Well, disinterest would imply same things as interest. It's still a power game or control issue.
Now, disinterest would indicate the existence of interest, which is discouraged by some mental conflict or emotional conflict. Is a dysfunctional lack of interest. But a simple lack of interest may be a sign of a higher spirituality. You see, it is dangerous to judge by the appearances. A disinterested individual may not have any sexual relationships, and one who lacks the interest may also have no sex, but the difference may be tremendous. The Bible speaks about becoming eunuchs for God. It's a very desirable condition to be a eunuch for God. I heard on television that the Pope has recently made a statement that the priests should be happy to become eunuch because he's against the marriage of the clergy. And there was an uproar against the Pope now among the priests of Catholic Church. But apparently they don't understand what the Bible says about being a eunuch for God. Larry, would you know what the Bible implies by that statement?
They want a choir of high-singing men.
Yeah, I didn't get what you said. What did you say?
I said they want a choir of sopranos.
Oh, the choir of sopranos, yes. Well, that's another aspect of this issue. But to be a eunuch for God means to lose interest in sexuality by way of evolving high levels of spiritual consciousness.
What do you have as far as recommendations for couples when one of the individuals is feeling a decreased interest in sex and the other person is feeling a high interest in sex, and as a result you end up having some conflict?
Oh yes, this is not unusual. For what is needed is the clarification of the meaning of each one's attitude towards sex. There is a meaning to everything, Larry. And when you approach it with the two intelligent questions of metapsychiatric methodology, you will be able to help such people to understand and perchance to be healed of their difficulties.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome, Larry.
Dr. Hora, this is Joan again.
Yes.
In the case of the couple that Larry was talking about, the presence of conflict shows that there's some ignorant thought still involved. It isn't just a matter of one person being spiritually mature and the other not, is it?
No, neither of them is.
Yeah. And so the presence of the conflict is the way you would know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question about back to touching a minute.
Yes.
Some of us were talking this morning about the pleasure of touching children
Yes.
and how pleasurable it is to sleep with a child or cuddle a child or hold a small child. And I had the thought at the time we were talking that somehow that didn't seem healthy for the child. It would be unhealthy for the child if the motivation of the adult was to get pleasure, I suppose.
That's correct.
And if it was rather an appropriate and sincere expression of love, it would be healthy.
Very good. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this, Joan, don't run away.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes there is a question about nursing at the breast.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a simple matter of performing a physiological function, because some mothers use the nursing experience for the sexual arousal. And if an infant is being nursed under such conditions, then that nursing process will leave a heightened preoccupation with eroticism in the child and may lead to various problems as he grows up. So it is very important, again, to understand that a loving mother will nurse the child for God's sake, not for her own sexual titillation. And not many people give this a thought because they think it's simple nourishment for the child. It's not as simple as it appears on the surface. A mother's thoughts play a very crucial role, whether a simple nursing function is whole health promoting or actually sowing the seeds of later pathology.
I recall in literature that I've seen about breastfeeding and natural childbirth that one of the motivations, one of the attempts to motivate women to do both was a statement that those are physiologically, sensually exciting.
Yes.
The childbirth can result in a wonderful orgasm, natural childbirth, and so can nursing.
Yes. You see how little understanding there is in this area.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome, John.
Dr. Hora, this is Mary.
Yes, Mary.
When we were talking about Jesus and Mary at the point before his ascension.
Yeah, was it you?
Could have been. I was understanding or thought that there was doing and not doing. And if I was aware of some self-confirmatory activity, that when I reached a certain level of understanding, that activity would just sort of cease to interest me.
Yes.
But from what Jesus did, is there also another position or attitude of by resisting or by not participating in that activity that it would be helpful to grow?
Well, of course, if you are interested in going all the way in your spiritual development, then you will be careful not to be seduced into any kind of sexual or sensual stimulation, even if it would seem to be very pleasurable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Boris, this is Lee.
Yes, could you repeat your name, please?
Lee.
Ranalei?
Yes.
Okay, Ranalei.
I would like to go into the subject of the fantasies that you've mentioned.
Yes.
I'm under the impression that we are taught that fantasies are healthy, etc., and needed for stimulation, etc. If our aim and our issue, we are in the midst of sex, then if fantasies a need still or an issue, or where do fantasies lie in that?
Well, if the sex is a purely loving experience, then there are no fantasies. There is just an awareness of love. And that is ultimately joyous and truly satisfying. Otherwise, there is always an unpleasant aftertaste. There is a well-known Latin saying which says, post coitum omne animal triste, for the ages. Post coitum omne animal triste.
In other words, that's normal?
Well, if it is not a love experience, it's usually a lustful pursuit, and which leaves people with a sense of emptiness and meaninglessness.
Of course, I can see that. I have the other question regarding the touching.
Yes.
We've talked about giving the touch. What about the direction? What's the meaning where to not have them touch you? In other words, not on the spiritual walk, not that we're aware of where we're at, but literally refusing people to touch you.
Yes, well, that could be some problem, because wanting and not wanting is the same. So in that case, the metapsychiatric therapist would try to understand the meaning of not wanting, just like we have explained the general meaning of wanting to touch and to be touched, and not wanting to be touched or to touch has also a meaning. And we would have to find out what it is. If someone came to us with this as a problem.
I understand that. I never thought of that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Bill.
Yes, Bill.
I have a next door neighbor that's a little girl about 2 or 3 years old, which she has really grown up with our family.
Yeah.
And I noticed in our relationship, there's an awful lot of hugging and, a lot of hugging, a lot of squeezing, a lot of that type that goes on.
Yeah.
How would I know that it was a loving situation? Or I guess what I'm asking is, I'm concerned with that I'm not creating a problem for her.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of, I'm sure there's a lot of sensualism or a lot of, I feel just spontaneous about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, little Christina is very sweet. Is it?
But yet,
Yeah. Well, the important thing is for you to be aware of your motivation. If it is a pure expression of love, and you are interested in conveying your love to the child rather than using the child for your own pleasure, then it is healthy. But if you use the child for your own pleasurable desire, then it is not so good. The chances are that the child wouldn't want you to do it.
Or because I have mixed emotions about it. Many times when I'll see her, and I want to grab her or hug her, I have the sense that I'm doing it for myself.
Yes.
It just seems like, but then the other sense, or the other point of it, it seems a very loving thing.
Yes.
I have two emotions about
Yeah.
it.
Well, usually when someone does it for himself, children know it and they pull away or they resist being fondled. They don't like to be exploited or used.
And so you're saying that when two people are touching, if there's some conflict or something going on in that touching, then you know something is off. Somebody's trying to hit something.
Right. Right.
That real helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Hora, this is Elizabeth.
Yes, Elizabeth.
Earlier, when you were talking about a mother who nurses a child for the sensual gratification,
Of herself.
yes, and
Yes.
there would be some pathology as a result of that.
Yes.
Would there be a general type of pathology, or how would that come to light?
Well, the chances are that such a child might develop symptoms of oral sexuality.
A preoccupation with that, you mean?
Oral eroticism. Do you know what oral eroticism is?
Yes, I think so, but you mean there would be a problem and that the person would be preoccupied with that?
Yes, that's right. Such a child would grow up to be primarily and exclusively even interested in fellatio. There are individuals who are mysteriously involved with an exclusive sexual preoccupation of fellatio. You know what fellatio is?
Yes, we've been through that.
Yes, these are called various sexual distortions of sexual aim.
So either being wanting that done to them or wanting to do it would be either way.
That's right. Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Jay.
Yes, Jay.
When Bill was talking about the touching the child next door,
Yeah.
it occurred to me, is this true about our animals in our home, that we touch them when we want to and don't touch them when we don't want to, and we need to...
Well, again, if you love animals, you have a desire to communicate your love to them. And that is usually done by petting or by feeding, right?
Right.
So again, but there are people who use animals to make themselves feel good. Such people often get scratched and bitten. If you use a cat to make yourself feel good, you get likely you get clawed. So the motivation for the petting is very important, just like the right motivation for nursing or for anything else for that matter in life.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it looks like what we are seeing as the discussion unfolds is that what seems initially to be a physical activity like touching, in the context of love, is being transformed.
Yes, of course.
And it's becoming a channel on a communication of love.
Yes, that's right.
So it is, I think it's important to see, otherwise we might end up thinking between touching and not touching.
Shooting and not shooting.
Right. And so conceivably, when we think back of the episode with Jesus and Mary,
Yes.
maybe what Jesus perceived that was Mary was not ready, her touch wasn't yet transformed. And that if she were spiritual, there could have been a touch that was not distracting.
Well, we are not justified to speculate about Mary's state of spiritual development. We can only speculate about the meaning of the statement which Jesus made about himself.
Right.
Don't touch me because I have not yet ascended.
Right. Okay.
Dr. Hora, this is Jenny again.
Yes, Jenny.
Can we infer from his statement that after I've ascended, it's okay?
Yes, because then I become non-dimensional and you can touch a non-dimensional being all you want.
Hooray!
Dr. Hora,
Yes.
this is Mickey.
Yes, Mickey.
I have a question along the same line. When Thomas touched Jesus
Yeah.
to reaffirm his faith in the Christ,
Yeah.
could he touch him because Christ had already been transformed into a higher plane of being?
No, you see, Thomas doubted the identity because it's an impostor. That Jesus couldn't have been resurrected and he couldn't have entered the room where they were, that he wasn't sure that it was Jesus. And he said, I can only be sure if I can put my fingers into your wounds. If you have these wounds and if I can touch them, then I will know for sure that you are not a fake, that you really are Jesus who was crucified. So he was doubting Thomas. And he just wanted to be sure that the individual who presented himself to the disciples is really Jesus.
So it was a question of lack of faith, but rather than.
Well, he wasn't sure. You see, if he saw with his eyes someone crucified and died on the cross, how can he suddenly appear and claim to be that individual? And so a materialist, the proof of reality is by that it is concrete, that the concrete is touchable. The abstract is thinkable. The spiritual is neither touchable nor thinkable, but realizable. Now, Thomas was on a very low level of material mindedness. For him, the concrete was reality, that which it can be touched. So he asked to be allowed to touch and stick his finger into the wound, and then he was satisfied. Yes, I know this is the real Jesus because I can stick my finger into his wounds.
Dr. Hora?
Yes.
I have one more question that not along the same line. I have a wife and we have 3 children. I have a daughter who's 7 and 2 sons that are 4 and 2.
Yeah.
There is, and there always has been, a good deal of nudity in the household. It's very natural for us to be naked around our children, and it's just the way it has always been.
Yeah.
Is that are we leading up to the problems for our children, or would our attitude, if we had the wrong attitude, would it then be harmful?
Well, certainly nudity, which has been recommended by some crazy psychologists for a long time, as encouraging naturalness about the body, it is really of no value whatsoever, because nudity has a tendency to stimulate prurient interest. The natural man is fascinated by the human body, and is always, whether he admits it or not, is always stimulated erotically by watching nude bodies. Now, if you learn how to deny this interest, then you're hurting yourself. If you indulge in this prurient interest, then you're overstimulating yourself. On the other hand, wearing clothes can have the same effect. Some clothes are designed to stimulate prurient interest, and some clothes are designed to deny this interest. So it has no value whatsoever to practice nudity. On the other hand, wearing clothes is not enough. What is important is to be interested and to share our interest in having positive regard for each other as spiritual beings. Thereby, we lose sight of the prurient aspects of sensory impressions, and we learn to see one another as spiritual beings. And therein lies mental health, and therein lies the secret of harmonious coexistence in family.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora,
Yeah.
this is Kara.
Kara.
Right.
Yes.
I have a question concerning two people who would really be interested in spiritual growth and interested in being loving. And I was wondering if, in that context, if there is any sexual activity that would be considered invalid.
Well, in any context, there is just one way of engaging in sexual activity, namely as an expression of sincere love and positive regard for one another. That's the only healthy way. Beyond that, I don't know what you're really asking.
I guess I'm kind of taking the biblical idea that some actions and activities are no-nos, and if they are invalid as well as being worldly no-nos.
Well, we are not looking at things in terms of no-nos and yes-yeses, but in terms of what is it really that we are doing? What is the mental equivalent of the physical activity? And the issue is always the mental equivalent, which we call the meaning. So whatever you do, you must always be aware of your secret thoughts and motivations connected with that particular activity. And then you will be on safe ground if you purify your motives.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora,
Yes?
this is Nancy.
Yes, Nancy.
I have a question about the principle, nothing comes into experience uninvited,
Yes.
and then saying you can have all the experiences you want as long as you're not interested in it.
Right.
I don't understand the two.
Yeah. Well, that's a that is a koan. You know what a koan is? It is something that boggles the mind. The important factor that it tries to bring home to people is that it's not the sexual act that is the issue or the problem. It is always the mental content which underlies that particular act. Now, if you have no interest in sex, how can you have sex?
Good question.
Well, you could have if your interest is to express love for someone who is desiring it. This way, the act itself becomes purified. But usually, if you have no the only way to have no interest in sex is by being interested in something of higher value. Now, if you would like to reach that point, you would have to give a great deal of thought to the first principle of metapsychiatry. Do you know it?
Yes,
Yes?
yes.
Well, if you give a great deal of attention to that principle, it will bring clarity and harmony into your life, and you will live in the land of PAGL, and sex will never be a problem.
Thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora,
Yes?
this is Claudette.
Yes, Claudette.
You were talking to Nancy when you said if you were having sex with your motive as love, all of a sudden it occurred to me you wouldn't have sex anymore. You would be having love.
That's right.
And then it's like eating or not eating or whatever. That's not the concern, but it's the spiritual concern. And all of a sudden it would be more in consequence that you were having love.
Yeah. Well,
somehow there was something that happened. I thought,
yeah, that's good. That's very good, Claudette. Jesus said, judge not by the appearance, but judge righteous judgment. You see, most people, when the word sex is mentioned, immediately conjure up an image in their mind of two bodies acting upon each other in a certain way. There is a visualization process of a certain activity. Well, that is just judging by appearances. A righteous judgment implies understanding the underlying mental process which is involved, which is the important factor.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Burl.
Yeah, I would like to add another additional remark, and I'll talk to you then, okay?
Okay.
Jesus also said, having eyes, ye see not. Having ears, ye hear not. What do you think did he mean by that? Claudette, come back.
Well, if you're seeing with your eye, you're not seeing with the spirit.
Exactly.
And if you're involved with your thought,
Yeah,
you're not seeing with God's way of seeing.
right. You see?
So whenever we're more interested
Yeah,
in seeing spiritually,
right.
Yeah, there is. It's not.
It is no problem.
No problem.
That's right, Claude. Okay, I'm ready for the next question. I didn't get your name, please.
Well,
Burl?
yes.
Okay, Burl.
Do I hear, throughout the last few minutes especially, that sex is a doing and that love is the being and that that's the difference throughout the whole topic?
Excellent, Burl. Excellent. You really heard right.
Thank you.
Dr. Hora, this is Bill.
Yes, Bill.
But then you say that in looking at sex, that no matter any material thing that we're really looking at
Yes.
is really spiritual.
No, not necessarily. Any healthy activity will be spiritual, but unhealthy activity is always psychological.
Somehow I'm trying to understand that it seems that all the material that we're seeing seems to be all really spiritual. If you were, I'm getting confused. Could you maybe help me with that?
Well, you could say everything is mental, but there is valid mental and invalid mental.
Oh,
You see, if somebody commits rape, right?
I,
Well, that's not spiritual, by far, right?
okay.
Rape is not spiritual. It is mental, even though it is physically an act of violence. Nevertheless, it is a mental, psychological process.
All right, but a sexual relationship, not a relationship, a sexual
Act.
act in a God-oriented way
Yes.
would still be a material,
Well,
a physical material act.
well, a sexual act in a God-oriented way, this is a very difficult phrase to accept. It's usually there is very little God in a sexual act, unless it is purely an expression of love and perhaps a procreative desire.
So then what you're saying is you're really transcending the body,
Oh, yes, of course. Of course.
that it isn't material.
Right.
It just appears that way.
Right, exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions? Any last in the spring? Looks like you have given all the answers.
Well, let's hope so.
Well, thank you very much for a very interesting seminar.
You're welcome, Jan. Goodbye, everyone.